What else would you expect? That is the statement of my spiritual journey. What else would you expect? I tell you, the things that show up in my life as opportunities, it blows my mind. And for a long time, I used to say, "Oh, that's incredible, I can't believe it." Well, I was in a moment of deep connection with Spirit, and Spirit came very clearly to me and said, "Stop saying that. You're sowing doubt. The only thing you can say now when these things happen is, what else would you expect?" And that is the story. So Eleanor Roosevelt said, "In the long run, we shape our lives and we shape ourselves. The process never ends until we die, and the choices we make are ultimately our own responsibility." Anne Frank in her diary wrote, "The final forming of a person's character lies in their own hands." And motivational speaker Hal Elrod said, "The moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you can change anything in your life." Got a little video clip for you. Video clip? I could act it out, but I don't think I just did that. I see it right there. Hello. How about that video clip that we have? I know that's a handsome dude up there, but we good?
Yeah, we're good. Got it.
All right, let's watch this for a second. It's real quick.
What do we do now?
Somebody! There are two people stuck on the nest.
There we go.
Oh, that's not good.
I need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me. Well, nothing else left to do. Is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. Who says he can fix it?
Okay, that's good. Thank you. You are responsible for how you respond to life. You can be a victim or you can be a hero. You are responsible for the impression you make on others. You are responsible for what it feels like to be with you. You are responsible for taking action to get unstuck. You are responsible for being the best you can be. You are responsible for making lemonade out of lemons. You are responsible for knowing who you are and what you are and how you serve. You, and only you, are responsible for you. But so often we find ourselves stuck on the escalator, don't we? We blame others for our current situation and circumstance, and we wait for someone to come and save us. Just like those on the escalator, the blame game gets us nowhere. Refusing to take responsibility for ourselves is a very clever way to avoid being held accountable for our actions. You, and only you, are responsible for you. You, and only you, are responsible for creating the life you were meant to live. Wherever I go, I teach this wonderful truth that dropped into my heart several years ago. It says, "Today I will create the life I was meant to live. I will shine the light I was born to give. No excuses, no regrets." Let me say that again. Today I will create the life I was meant to live. I will shine the light I was born to give. No excuses, no regrets. Considering this current state of our world, I'm sure you've seen the news lately. As people of spirit and light, it is essential for us to take responsibility for who we are, for what we are, and for how we serve. In other words, to live with no excuses and no regrets. In every moment, no matter what the circumstance or how we feel about it. Well, let me tell you, that's not easy. What else would you expect? If you really knew me, you would know that I made a choice as a teenager to live a life without alcohol or substances. As I became an adult, I evolved to a role model and mentor for young people, both personally and professionally. Throughout my life, I have consistently maintained this choice, and I present myself as an example to young people of what life can look like, alcohol and substance-free. In January of 2018, I faced one of the most challenging experiences of my life. My wife and I were in Florida to celebrate our anniversary. And on our way from the airport to the hotel, we heard that there was going to be a rocket launch. Now, Margie and I had been to Florida many times, and we looked at ourselves and we said, let's do something different. Let's experience something we've never experienced before on this trip to Florida. A rocket launch, cool, we'd never seen a rocket launch. So we headed over towards the Atlantic coast. Along the highway across from the water from Cape Canaveral, so we could pull over and watch the rocket launch. I was driving, and as we were looking for a place to pull off to the side of the road, I was stopped by a Brevard County sheriff. I wasn't speeding, so I assumed that there might be something wrong with the car. We were in a rental car. So it was interesting, no issues, wasn't worried. Officer had me roll down the window and asked a few questions, and I had no idea really what was going to happen. And he asked me to step out of the car. And I was like, okay. Now, by this time, my wife is on the phone talking with her best friend, having a good laugh at the fact that we got pulled over in Florida. So I provided the officer with my license, and he came back and said, "Sir, I need you to step out of the car." I still had no idea why I was pulled over at this point. He asked me some questions about my health, which I thought was interesting. Thanks for being interested in my health. And then he instructed me to complete what is known as a field sobriety test. I didn't understand, but expressed my willingness to cooperate. Well, first he asked me to follow this little blue light. Now, we had been traveling all day, and I had just put new contacts in. So my eyes were just a little dry, and every time I had to follow the light, I could feel my contacts pop a little bit. And so I had to keep squinting and whatever. And I told him, I said, hey, I got new contacts in, and so no issue. I figured no problem, right? So then he asked me to walk a white line, heel to toe. And he demonstrated how to do it. I had to pivot on my back foot and so forth and so on. But funny enough, he said, but I don't have the tape in my car, so you just have to imagine there's a white line on the ground. Seriously, this is true. So I'm walking, heel to toe, just like he told me, and I'm not following a line. And kind of there's a little bit of a slight kind of curve on the road, edge of the highway there, and I stumbled on my pivot because I didn't understand. I really quite didn't understand. You pivot on your back foot, but it felt more normal to pivot on my right foot, you see. So I knew I stumbled, but I thought, okay, I did just fine, no problem. I continued to express my willingness to cooperate. And then he says, okay, finally he wants me to balance on one foot without touching the ground and count out loud until he stopped me. Well, I counted to 19, and I thought, dang, that was pretty good, because that's not easy to do. And, well, anyways, I figured we're going to be on our way real soon. What else would you expect? Instead, the officer told me he had no choice but to arrest me for DUI. I was dumbfounded. My wife still hadn't gotten off the phone. She was just chatting away in the car as all this was happening outside of the car. About the time the officer put the handcuffs on my wrists and my wife gets out of the car and just is in a panic. What's going on, right? And I had to calm her down and calm the situation down. She says, we don't drink. I don't understand this. I said, it's okay. The officer didn't have a breathalyzer in the vehicle, so which I thought was interesting. So I said, well, I would really like to, when we get to the jail, to do a breathalyzer and whatever. So, well, it was clear to me. It was clear to me in that instant that I did not have control of this situation at all. But I did know I still had choice. I knew that I could choose to remain the kind, courageous, and loving man that I have always been, no matter what happens next. I knew in that moment, when he was clicking those handcuffs behind my back, I knew in that moment that I still had choice. I can't tell you how I knew that. I can't tell you why that was in my head as the handcuffs clicked, and he clicked them really tight. But I was being kind and helpful. I don't understand why he clicked them so tight. And then he put me in the car. I was placed in the back of the squad car and transported to the Brevard County Jail. And so began a 22-hour ordeal that would change my life in ways I could never, ever have imagined. There are no words to adequately describe the intense dehumanization that I endured over those 22 hours. I was no longer a human being. I was now an arrested criminal. It's how they treated me. It's how they treated me. Not one guard acknowledged my humanity and offered any kindness to me. The facility nurse on duty was the only person who offered some kindness to me. And she was only there for a short period of time. So it was about 7 o'clock when I was pulled over. And this went on for hours. Everything in my possession and on my body was taken from me. I was scanned and was given a double extra large blue jumpsuit. and flip-flops that were broken. So here I am in my double extra large blue jumpsuit, holding it together and trying to shuffle along in these stupid flip-flops that wouldn't stay on my feet because they were broken. Imagine. My fingerprints were taken and I stood before the camera for a mugshot. A mugshot that is still online if you'd like to find it. I wouldn't recommend it because it only bumps it up in the queue on Google. So don't go looking for my mugshot. It is not good. It is not good. So if there's a hell on earth, it's the holding cell in this jail. I was placed in a small cement and glass room with a metal bench and a toilet. That's it. And at times there were up to 12 men in this holding cell with me. There were at least 10 holding cells in a row, and they were all packed. This was a Friday night. The place was chaotic. The holding cell was vile. The metal bench held only a few guys, so most of us had to stand for hours. Sitting on the floor was not an option because it was covered with filth and layers of God only knows what. And I felt so bad because one man was leaning against the wall and he fell asleep and went whoop and landed right on the floor, right in that filth. The men in the holding cell were angry and aggressive, and I immediately felt tension. I remember thinking that I was glad I had decided to get my very first tattoo just a couple months before, because the tattoos on these gentlemen, no, didn't hold a candle to it, but at least I had a little bit of street cred. So, hey guys, good to see you. Not in the same league, let me tell you. Not in the same league. The first thing that was asked of me as I walked into the holding cell was, "What the did you do?" And I said nothing. I did nothing. And I told him my story. Over the next 6 hours in the holding cell, my inner tension subsided and I experienced some kindness. A deep and genuine kindness from the men in the holding cell. I opened myself to their stories of pain and brokenness, and that holding cell became a place of healing for me, and perhaps for them. I offered love by listening to these beautiful men. I cried with them. I was outraged with them. I reminded them of their goodness. I dreamed with them. And I was a model of fatherly love. One young man, CJ was his name, he was coming off of a substance in a really bad way. He had come into the cell and had been picked up and just was not in a good place. And I decided I was just going to sit down right next to him. He was young, younger than my own kids. And I sat next to him so he didn't hurt himself, because he would fall over and hit the ground from the seat, and then I would pick him back up and set him there. And I would just look into his eyes. And every time I just looked up and I said, "You'll be okay. It'll be all right." The gratitude in his eyes when he was feeling better was deep and powerful. He knew he was safe with me. He opened his soul and he shared his story of a lifetime of pain and betrayal. He asked how I could be so kind and compassionate to him. He told me he had never had a father in his life, and that what I did for him was what he imagined it would be like to have a father. He practiced what I taught him. I taught him how to breathe into his body and calm his body. He called it the John pose. Another young man by the name of Jeremy, he was 24. He was facing his 12th drug-related felony. We stood in the center of the holding cell, and he told me his story about again and again and again returning. Every 6 months, he said, "I'll get clean, they'll put me in, they'll lock me up, I'll get clean, and then I can last about 6 months, and then they arrest me again because there's no support for me." We cried together. I hugged him. He hugged me in the middle of the jail cell. 2 grown men crying and sharing a moment of love. Jeremy was upset after several hours that I had not been given the opportunity to call my wife. So it was about 2 in the morning, and I still hadn't had the opportunity to call my wife. And Jeremy knew this because we had talked and shared. And Jeremy, out of the goodness of his heart, decided that it was time for him to make some noise on my behalf. And Jeremy advocated for me. He approached a guard and strongly advocated that I get my phone call because I needed to speak to my wife. As you might imagine, Jeremy was immediately restrained, about five officers, pulled out of there, and I never saw him again. He did that for me. I don't know if he was changed. I know I was changed. About 3 in the morning, I was handed a roll of toilet paper, a comb and a toothbrush, and a bedroll. And they said, "Follow me." And I followed an officer through jail cell, clanging door, slamming door, after slamming door. Natalie and I had done prison retreats back in the day. And so I knew what it was like to hear the slam of the door behind you the deeper you get into the facility. Never had I ever heard that sound, not knowing if I was going to come out. I was taken to cell block 2, and the door popped open. It's 3 in the morning. The door pops open, and the officer says, "Step in." I stepped in, the door closed, and he left. And I'm standing in the middle of this common area, and there's cell doors all along. And I'm like, now what do I do? And one of the cell doors, cell 207, popped open. And a guy in the cell says, "Psst, over here." Okay, I guess I'm coming. So I go over to that little jail cell. I go in, 207. Door slams behind me and locks. And there's a bunk bed and a toilet and about this much room between the bunk bed and the wall. And there are already 2 men in the cell. The guy that was there laying on the bed says to me, "You don't have to worry. We're not going to rape you." I hadn't thought about that. So I unrolled my bedroll and I sat on the floor, questioning what in the world is happening. What in the world is happening? I didn't sleep. Breakfast was at 4:30. The food was disgusting. But I learned very quickly that I didn't know when I was getting out, and I knew nothing. I still didn't know what I was being charged with. I had never been told what I was being charged with. So I gave out my food, handed to folks, figured out who was running the unit. Cell block 200, I knew who was running it pretty quick. After breakfast, I sat in the cell reflecting on integrity and personal responsibility. I thought of people throughout history who had been jailed unjustly. I thought of Nelson Mandela. I thought of Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi. I even thought of Jesus, and I prayed to be like them. I thought about how my integrity is the only thing I have once everything else is taken away. At this point, I still had no information about my charges, and I came to the conclusion that I might not be leaving anytime soon. It was dumbfounding to me how quickly I was able to settle into that and believe that I no longer had freedom. I even forgot that I was in the United States. I had no sense of anything. This kind of thing doesn't happen in the United States. Around 8:30, my name was called, and I was handcuffed again and escorted to a courtroom. I appeared before a judge, and after explaining who I am, what I do with my life, She ordered my release, but she did not drop the charges. You want to know why? Because there was never a breathalyzer done. There was nothing on record that I had nothing in my system. They took a urine sample because I demanded it, and the sample got set on the top of the toilet, and I never saw it, and then I left, had to leave that space. So I didn't even know if my urine sample went somewhere. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The judge told me that the rocket launch that I missed was beautiful. Was beautiful. I was finally processed out of the facility at 5 o'clock. The reunion with my wife was probably one of the most profound moments of our marriage. All of these guys and me released, walking over this ramp out of the jail, and there's my wife. I cannot tell you the safety that returned to me in that moment. During those long hours of waiting in cell 207, my thoughts kept returning to the indigenous understanding of Jaguar medicine. There it is. Jaguar medicine came after my experience there. In indigenous culture, medicine is a word used for anything that brings healing and growth. And Jaguar is an animal of power and strength. Jaguar medicine teaches that personal strength comes from the integrity gained by living up to your potential, maintaining your dignity and compassion, and being honest, no matter what the contrary influences might be. Jaguar medicine had been a guiding force in my life up until this point. I welcomed Jaguar medicine in those 22 hours. And I pledged to allow this experience to teach me to love bigger and to serve greater in the world. All charges were eventually dropped, and the arrest was expunged with the support of an amazing family, outstanding legal counsel. When we called the lawyer, it was really funny because I couldn't call a lawyer, and my oldest son, finds a lawyer for me and explains who I am and explains the situation. And the lawyer said, well, if his story is true, I'll pay for his expungement. That lawyer paid for my expungement. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. What else would you expect? I did pursue justice the best way that I knew how, and I filed a civil rights lawsuit against the officers and against the sheriff's department. Not for financial gain, but for meaningful change. I refused to allow what happened to me to be just a random event that I had to find a way to make it through. I chose to use what happened to me in service for the greater good. You see, I'm always in choice. And we pushed for years, and just last year, after 5 years of pushing, a settlement happened, a historic settlement happened. I was on the national news and all that kind of cool stuff. And part of my settlement agreement, because the only thing I wanted was not money. I wanted the opportunity to help teach what they needed to do differently. I was given that opportunity. I was also given an apology letter, which was unheard of, because in the apology letter tells exactly what they did wrong every step of the way. Pretty amazing. It's never happened before. It's never happened before. So, Jaguar medicine. Jaguar continues to lead me down the path of integrity with no excuses and no regrets. You see, I always have choice. I am always responsible for how I show up in this world, no matter how I feel about it, no matter what the circumstances may be. Today in this community, I'm so grateful to be here, in this community of spiritual people, light and spirit. It's my prayer That as people in your knowing, you embrace each new situation and circumstance with confidence in the truth of who you are. I learned I do not need to know what the outcome will be. I just need to know who I am in the moment. Let me say that again. I do not need to know what the outcome will be. I just need to know who I am in the moment. Will it be easy? Nah, probably not. Most meaningful things are not easy. That's what gives them so much meaning. But when I live without excuse and without regret, therein lies freedom. Therein lies freedom. Living without excuses. Living without regrets. I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am here. I am free. I have come. Today, I will create the life I was meant to live. I will shine the light I was born to give. No excuses, no regrets. Thank you for letting me share some of my story with you today.
Thank you, Jon. Thank you so much.